Line control is about accurately controlling your arm so you can draw the lines you want to draw. If you've been watching my content for a while, you know I keep going on about this to the point where I ping people in the Discord server every day to do their line work drills, but only like 30 people actually do them. So I think I need to make a whole video explaining why line control is one of the most important art fundamentals and why you shouldn't think you're going to get better at it over time and you can just ignore it. First of all, line control is your ability to control your arm so that it can draw lines the way your brain wants it to draw. I think there's a small misunderstanding when it comes to the importance of line control. When we're drawing, I guess technically there are two phases. We have a sketching phase where we draw the guidelines and we think about how the forms are connected to each other. Usually the drawing looks kinda messy during this phase, and then there's the cleanup phase, where we take the sketch and clean up all of the forms and turn it into a nice looking drawing. I think a lot of people think that line control only comes into play during this cleanup phase. In reality, line control comes into play anytime you're moving the pen. When you're doing the cleanup, but also when you're sketching and even when you're coloring. This is why I say it's one of, if not the most important fundamental, because it comes into play all the time, unlike anatomy, which only applies when you're drawing humans, or values, which only come into play when you're painting. The lines that your brain imagines, as in the lines you're intending to draw, and then the lines your arm actually draws, are two separate things. You might think that you're drawing lines exactly the way you want, but unless you've got perfect control over your arm, you most likely aren't. You can test this pretty easily by trying to draw a perfect circle. Your brain knows exactly what a perfect circle looks like, and that shape is about as simple as it gets. But I'm willing to bet that when it comes to drawing one, you're going to be struggling. You can also test this with 2 points and then trying to draw a straight line in between them. Making sure that this line is accurate is also really difficult. These are both extremely simple lines that you're able to imagine perfectly, and it's already this easy to make mistakes. So imagine how many mistakes you'll make when trying to draw more complex lines that you can't even perfectly imagine before drawing them. As a side note, I think this is also a big reason for why people struggle with drawing boxes. Like I said, drawing even one straight line is already hard, but now imagine having to draw like 9 of them and there being only one correct orientation for each of these lines that makes the box correct. Yeah, good luck with that. So now that we've gone over what line control is and why it's important, we need to talk about how to practice it. Something that I've seen is that people think that line control is something you just naturally get better at over time if you keep drawing. That is true, but only under certain conditions. If you want to get better at something, you need to actually dedicate some brain power to it. You can't just autopilot and expect to get better. So in the case of line control, that means that while you're drawing, you first need to decide in your head what the line that you want to draw needs to look like, and then you need to actively think about how you're moving your arm. This probably also means that you'll have to slow down so you actually have time to think about what line you need to draw next. Don't feel like you have to constantly move your pen, because that's how you'll end up with lines that don't go where you want them to go. Draw a line, stop for a second and think about what the next line should look like, draw that, and then rinse and repeat. This is going to be a really annoying and exhausting way to draw initially, because you're going to be really slow and you're constantly using your brain, but if you keep doing it, you're going to get faster, and then eventually it'll improve your line control, which also allows you to draw faster. And I have to reiterate, this is basically the only way you can improve your line control through just natural drawing. If you're autopiloting and you never think about what line you're going to draw, your line control is not going to improve no matter how many hours you spend drawing. Now, another way to improve your line control is by doing some line work drills every day. This is similar to if you want to get good at a sport. A lot of your time is going to be spent doing isolated exercises in addition to playing the actual game. With line work, this means that in addition to doing normal drawings, we can also do an exercise that only focuses on improving our line work. There are multiple different exercises you can do, and it all depends on what practice you think will be more effective for your body right now. A couple of examples are, you can freehand straight lines, filling up a whole page, and then filling up the gaps in between them. You can do this with curved lines as well. And an exercise that I like to do is tracing circles and ellipses. I've already mentioned that drawing a perfect circle is really hard, but ellipses are another reason for why you need good line control. Ellipses are really annoying to draw because they need to be perfectly symmetrical. And in case you didn't know, ellipses are just circles in perspective. And circles are a really common shape, meaning when you're doing perspective drawings, you're going to have to draw ellipses at some point. So you need to be able to draw these extremely well. Then if you get tired of tracing circles and ellipses, another thing you could do is just trace drawings that somebody else made. Usually what I recommend is taking screenshots of an anime and then tracing those drawings because animators are really good at controlling their lines. So learning from them is a good idea. Also, when doing these exercises, I recommend not drawing your lines that quickly. Try to go a bit slower so you can actually train your line control. I know some people say you need to go fast because drawing lines is all about confidence, but a line needs to follow a certain trajectory for it to represent the form you're trying to draw. Trajectory means that a line is following a specific path, which is basically just a string of points that the line has to go through. So, to draw a good line, you need to be accurate enough to go through all of these points. If you're drawing fast, unless you already have really good line control, there's no way you're hitting all of these points correctly, making your line trajectory wrong. So sure, you end up with a line that looks clean and doesn't have any shakiness, but it's just a completely different line than what it was supposed to be. So ultimately, if you want to get better at line control, I recommend doing both of these things. So being conscious of your lines while you're making a drawing, and doing some line control exercises every day. I think line control is one of those things where people don't fully understand how much this is actually handicapping their drawing skills until they get good at it. But that's basically it. You should treat line control similarly to all of the other fundamentals. If you're dedicating time to practicing anatomy or perspective, I think you should do the same thing to line control. Dedicate some of your practice time to it. And that's it for this video. Now don't forget, you can always join our Discord server if you'd like to get advice from other artists, or you'd like to just hang out with other artists. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so through Patreon or YouTube memberships, which are linked in the description. And then of course, you can also leave a comment telling me what other tutorials you want to see next. But I guess I'll catch you guys next time.